As we are going on this Tuesday morning, Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards, and we are getting into a Tuesday. The digging out continues, and you heard Mike Pomp in the Morning Information Center talking about some of the roadways. I'll tell you, some of the side roads are less busy roads, but maybe not the interstate, but even 16, talking to some people going up to Rochester this morning, Route 4, Northwood, some of the wind overnight and blowing snow, making it a little slippery. So I went by about 3 blue-eyed accidents. And 2 things I'm just going to say, please, with this light slow, clean off your vehicles. It is a law, but you shouldn't have to be told that. And also, please respect anyone who's stopping with a breakdown or an accident, and blue lights, local police or state police, move over, please, because I saw 3 or 4 this morning coming over from the coast. Here we are. By the way, good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, Maine, up into Portland. We have an additional 98.7 FM HD2, and so 2 FMs going up into Portland now, Maine. Good morning, Lakes region. Good morning, Manchester, Concord, Nashua, you name it, the whole state, the region, Maine, and worldwide. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an HR. Poll question. What's that, J-Dog?
We're on YouTube.
Oh, and on YouTube as well.
Oh,
there we go. Video all way. We have a YouTube channel streaming live at the Pulse of an H. Thank you, J-Dog. Our poll question up on X, and what's a good segue to our newsmaker, our first newsmaker out of the gate on this Tuesday morning. Do you think Homeland Security Secretary Noem will be replaced? A lot of stuff happening behind the scenes at the White House, a lot of review on Minneapolis. Tensions, of course, quite intense. And I want to welcome in Congressman, 1st Congressional District Democrat, running for the U.S. Senate as well. But today we're talking about congressional matters and updates. Chris Pappas joining us live. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Jack. It's great to be with you.
Well, busy times. Let me just start, if you don't mind, with our poll question there. I had some criticisms yesterday on my show of Secretary Noem on some contradictions and hypocritical statements, as well as maybe optics on leadership. Do you think the secretary should be replaced?
Yes. I frankly don't think she should have been in the position in the first place, but I think we're seeing a lack of leadership here and a mishandling of events and a lack of focus on the kinds of things that most Americans want to see to keep our country safe, including going after criminals, people who are violating the law that are here illegally. That should be the focus of the Department of Homeland Security. But we continue to see ways that ICE is inflaming tensions and is actually making America less safe. You hear that directly from law enforcement officials that are on the ground, where 3,000 agents were sent into the city of Minneapolis. She also misrepresented and lied about the 2 shootings where individuals were killed who were protesting. She rushed to call that domestic terrorism before a full investigation had been conducted. And I think the American people deserve answers here. People don't like what they see happening on the streets of Minneapolis. They know this doesn't represent the best of our country's values, and I think we need a change of leadership.
Chris Pappas, Representative, funding now in Congress, keeping the government open, keeping the departments funded. Do you sense, or do you support, you've talked about this, I think you're introducing a piece of legislation about funding and spending in terms of Homeland Security and ICE as pertains to detention policies and training, so much so that some wonder if that could cause another government shutdown, something that I think most people do not have a great appetite for. But your thoughts on the bill, the legislation you're introducing, your concerns on spending and a possible government shutdown, is it worth it over this?
Well, all the spending bills cleared the House. They're in the Senate, and they have to pass before the end of this week. Now, there's agreement on 11 out of the 12 areas of government where you had bipartisan agreement, in excess of 300 members of the House voting for those bills. I think you've got to clear the decks here. Let's pass those bills where there is agreement, while there continues to be some focus on what needs to be done with respect to Homeland Security and additional accountability measures. And that's just not Democrats saying that. That's people on both sides of the aisle who are calling for investigations, who understand that that federal law enforcement agents should be using the best practices that we see in law enforcement all across the country, whether that's using warrants, making sure that officers are identified, using body cameras, those are some basic steps that have been implemented by law enforcement in a way to build trust with the community and keep our country safe. And I don't think that's too much to ask. So that conversation's happening in the Senate this week, and I think we got to stay focused on how we fund government responsibly and meet the needs of this country, including with respect to public safety. Now, I've introduced legislation around this extra funding that ICE and Homeland Security received last summer in the reconciliation bill. They received $75 billion above their annual appropriation, so above their regular budget. They received another 3-4 times that annual budget in extra funding that they have wide discretion in terms of how they use it, largely for detention and enforcement efforts.
Right.
And I really think that given what we have seen, we need to be repositioning that money instead of funding these extra enforcement measures that are really running roughshod over the Constitution and the law. Let's invest in community policing. Let's send that to our local departments that are struggling to recruit and retain right now. To our local communities whose budgets are stretched. That's truly how you'll promote public safety.
Chris Pappas, Congressman, if you were to win this race and you're in the Senate, a lot of the decisions like the last time of the government shutdown, the longest really in modern day history, this was in the Senate, the votes. Are you hopeful or confident that a government shutdown can be avoided over even issues like this on spendings with HS, the budget, or would you vote to shut the government? I mean, what are your thoughts? Should we be confident we'll avoid a government shutdown?
You've got to get people in a room. And frankly, that's what needed to happen back in the fall, and where you had that breakdown of negotiation. That's what resulted in a shutdown that was the longest in U.S. history. But since that point in time, there have been strong bipartisan deals reached on funding all the areas of government. And again, all those bills have passed the House. And I think there's strong agreement still on 11 of the 12 areas of government. And so let's clear the decks and pass those. Right. But I think, look, the appropriations process is broken. And this really goes back to, last summer where the House and Senate didn't do its job before the deadline to come to an agreement. So that's where, this process all starts. And you got to put good ideas on the table and be willing to compromise. And appropriators and members of the House and Senate need to do that.
We'll see what happens in Minneapolis. And we started talking about this, Congressman Pappas, and you mentioned leadership and Secretary Noem should be replaced. But what about rank and file federal immigration or federal law enforcement ICE agents? Have you spoken to any of those folks directly and what they're dealing with in terms of even like the hotel they're staying in being raided and, they're being taunted and, I'm not commenting on the details of the two fatal shootings, but they're under a lot of duress as well. Have you talked to any of the rank and file to get their side of this or not?
Well, I haven't over the last few weeks. I certainly have interacted with members of federal law enforcement during my time in Congress, and I understand the pressures that folks are under. And I think this is about how we have policies and conduct operations in a way that's consistent with the law and that's actually taking steps to make our country safe. No one's going to argue with the need to go after criminals, people who are here illegally, who are breaking the law. And that really should be the core function of ICE, and I've consistently said that. So I do think that we need to make sure that people who are protesting are doing so peacefully, that everyone understands their rights and responsibilities. Right. And this is a situation, I believe, where we need new leadership, and leadership that not just doesn't inflame tensions, but also is focusing on things like training and making sure that people understand how to de-escalate situations. I've heard from a lot of members of law enforcement here in New Hampshire that are scratching their heads in terms of what they're seeing. And we need a course correction with respect to what we're seeing at Homeland Security.
Now, of course, you're in a primary. I'm not going to get into the Senate race, but I referenced that. I think an opponent of yours, Karishma Manzoor, has said she supports abolishing ICE. Do you think that's too far? Do you think the mission is still good if they make changes in leadership and policies and approach?
Look, if people are breaking the law, if they're violent, they're committing crimes, and they have no business being here in the United States, then we need a way to be able to deport those individuals. And that's been the case through administrations of both parties in this post 9/11 era since ICE has been created. So that core law enforcement function is really important. I think that's something that needs to be the focus here. As we move forward, I think this is all about how we keep our country safe, how we have a strong border policy. There are bipartisan ways that we can invest in border security and the best technology for this country. And I think that's something, frankly, I've criticized the Biden administration on, over the course of his 4 years in office. He created a situation that was incredibly untenable at the border. It became a crisis, and he was slow to react until the last few months of his administration. So I've been critical of presidents of both parties here. I think we need Congress to step up to the plate and try to provide for some bipartisan solutions that will make our country safe and fix a broken immigration system.
A constant passion of yours in Congress, and I hope that if you end up winning the Senate race, but of course that's not until the fall. We don't know yet, primary and then the general election. But veteran leadership. I think you serve on a key veterans committee, veteran advocacy.
Yeah.
Any general update this time of year? I know that the new Women's Health Center at the VA, they're a great partner and sponsor of mine on my show, Kevin Forrest. That's coming online. But any other general updates? And then I had a real quick question because time's important today for you, I know. But Tom Raffio, someone who I know President CEO of Northeast Delta Dental, and he's on my show so much, and we've worked to fill that. He says it's a congressional gap on oral health coverage for veterans. So we've created this informal network of dentists in the state, Congressman. I think you're aware of Dr. Mitch Correa and others who basically are doing these surgeries for veterans at no cost to the veteran. And then Tom's Delta Dental Board underwrites the cost of this, but it's been a remarkable program. Is there any way to get that fixed and any general veteran update? And I'll let you conclude with that. Thank you for supporting the veterans.
Sure. Well, when you provide care for veterans, it should be treating the whole veteran. And we know the ways that dental care and oral health is connected to the whole health of the veteran. And so that's why I support and have co-sponsored legislation to expand dental care through the VA system and through community care. I think that's absolutely essential. It's something that I hear from veterans all the time. Now, we've seen some steps forward on some legislation in our Veterans Committee. Even in a divided Washington, we're seeing legislation progress around housing, suicide prevention, and mental health care, workforce training, and the transition program, which oftentimes misses the mark and sort of doesn't provide the right tailored information for veterans as they transition out of their military service. So there are a lot of good ideas on the table there. Recently had a bill signed into law by the president that would increase pensions for Medal of Honor recipients, a bipartisan law that would quadruple the pension that Medal of Honor recipients, our nation's highest heroes, receive to be able to live with financial security. So there are a number of things that we can do here ultimately to make VA deliver on its promises, to make sure there's better coordination between VA and DOD, and that we're meeting the needs of then veterans. And I hope we can see some progress on housing and mental health care and suicide prevention in particular.
Yeah, those are big. The mental health, the emotional side is so key. Thank you, Congressman. Representative Pappas live on this Tuesday. A lot to talk about, a lot to cover. Make it a good Tuesday. And at least you're not shoveling. I think you're down there in D.C., so you don't have to shovel the vehicle off. But I guess it's even chilly down the south.
I'm in New Hampshire.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I have one. The plow just came by again, so I've got one more pass to do on my driveway.
Well, I don't know if you've seen it. Tennessee, Mississippi, they're dealing with ice and cold temperatures and power outages. Thank you, Congressman.
Take care, Jack. Bye-bye.
All right, when we come back, update you on some of the other news talk. We have a lot going on, and we'll update you on the South. Anna Brown, Citizens Count, on this Tuesday morning is going to be updating us on some legislative stuff. Brad Card will be joining us, and then Dean Spiliotis, Southern New Hampshire University. Mike Cody, remembering Bob Baines of Manchester, the former mayor and great principal and educator and advocate for the New Hampshire's largest city for many, many years. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, with the Pulse of NH. Back in a moment. Hey, Jack Heath here. Tune in
Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right. Pretty all-encompassing interview with Congressman Pappas with things like debate over whether or not we're going to see another government shutdown, this time over things like spending and policies with Homeland Security. Congressman Pappas saying that Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, should be replaced. There's a lot going on at the White House over that very subject, some changes in the leadership of the ICE leadership in Minneapolis, but certainly things continuing to be tense there. We'll have more of that interview, and I think we'll get it up online today, or at least on my Good Morning New Hampshire when J-Dog, we have all this going on. But J-Dog, we've had about 3 or 4 members of the media asking for audio on that, so we'll make it easy on you because I know that you do a lot. But as we get going here this morning, going to get an update on the state legislature from Anna Brown, Citizens Count, citizenscount.org in a moment. Couple of mentions on the Mother Nature side of things. I heard a story in our news this morning out of Mississippi. Wow. States like Mississippi, Tennessee, frigid, below freezing temperatures. They had about more than an inch of ice and power outages, and they're trying to just get through that. I remember years ago, remember that in Texas, they had that big, huge freeze, and there was a problem with the power grid or something. That was a while ago, but Mother Nature, I don't know about you. But this is a real New England weather. And I don't want to get into Al Gore's theory or, of course, the whole used to be global warming, climate change. I'm not saying the climate doesn't change. That's not my point, but I haven't heard much from him. Of course, he did very well in that. But this has been, wow, ski areas are loving this snow. Yesterday, it's like champagne powder, light, fluffy stuff. And a lot of people still digging out this morning. Some of the roads, of course, still slippery. Some of the side roads, even some of the semi-busy roads still have some, I call it grease or snow cover on there. So slow down. I went by, I want to just count and be accurate, 4 different fender benders this morning, just coming over from Seacoast to Concord, our capital, and our capital studios here at Benny Media, just right near the State House. So 4 different accidents with blue lights there responding. Some people just sliding off the road into the snowbank, which is obviously very big now. One other public safety note on the rotaries and, traffic circles where people forget how to yield or drive. Those snowbanks are very high now, very high from the plowing. So you don't really see the traffic flow. So what's a commonsensical thing to do? Slow down, like really slow down. If you can't see, poke the nose out. Don't just drive out into the, a rotary ahead of the vehicles, and they're slippery going around the circles, and don't go too fast. Just slow down. Slow down. All right, we're going to update you on some of the other news talk, but a reminder, tomorrow we're going to hear from Andrew at Colette Travel in our studios here in our Concord region, capital region. And Andrew is really organizing my trip this fall in late October to Great Britain and Scotland, and just a great classic, bucket list type tour. And Colette's been doing this. They've been in business, family-run business out of Rhode Island. They see to every detail, 100 years, and Andrew and I are going to walk through the details of this trip. It's the end of October 25th, I believe, and it's going to be a wonderful trip. I think we even get to hang out in one of the great, I think it's the Conwy Castle, but to see that beautiful stuff. And I haven't lately, I don't know about you, but the hot trip, meaning the popular trip I've talked to a lot of people about, is to Scotland. And I can't wait to go. I hear the food's incredible. The people are nice, but I just love seeing that old history. We think we're old. We're young. This country's young compared to some of these castles and towns and villages. So go to the pulseofnh.com to learn more on that trip. And a lot of you are already signing up. This spring, we will have an event here in our building with Andrew and the team at Colette. And one thing they do is, online, you can do a lot of this stuff yourself today, but you know what? They take care of every detail. And the executive type coaches, when you get there, so you're not worried about the driver you get or you being taken advantage of. And if you hire a driver, the guides, they have the best guides that work with them, because sometimes you get a good guide, sometimes you get a bad guide. I'm talking when you're there and you want to see the sights. They do it all. And it's a great trip value-wise, so we're going to break that down tomorrow. But go to thepulseofnh.com. and you'll see my trip to the British Isles and Great Britain and the landscapes. Check it out. I'd love you to come. But it's going to fill up fast and it's limited. And that's one of the great things in these trips. Very quality, high-end attention to detail. Also, Auto Fair, sponsors of our state police segment. We heard from Lieutenant Chris Storm on Thursday ahead of the frigid weather and the big snow from Sunday and Monday. And Debbie Roy, they still got a couple of used vehicles, and what a great time to get them. Trucks, pickup trucks. Boy, what a winter for that. Of course, I love them even in the summer. But some of these used trucks, four-wheel drive, they have are closer to 20 grand than 60 grand for a new one. So I'm going to get an update on the models and the mileage, but they do have some great pickup trucks and all-wheel drive vehicles. Auto Fair Honda across on the mall in New Hampshire. Call Debbie Roy. Call Debbie. 603 direct 603-634-4726. She's the sales manager there. And just say Jack, the pulse of an H. 603-634-4726. 634-4726. Test drive one of those vehicles today and get a used pickup truck, because you know what? After about a month, you're probably not going to know if it's new or used anyway, and it's going to leave like it's new. It's going to look like it's new, detailed, and it's going to go probably another couple 100,000 miles. So, save some money, because new vehicles are expensive. Plus, they want your used vehicle, so check it out. Also, tomorrow, we're going to hear from John Stebbins, Procon Construction, Procon Corp. They're one of the best builders in New England, and John's the CEO, and they are committed to providing more affordable housing in the Granite State. So tomorrow, we'll hear from Procon and what they're doing on affordable housing. We need more of it, and there's not enough affordable housing, even to rent. By the way, for all your dirt on building and development of the Seacoast, get all your daily news for building and development, Seacoast Dirt, seacoastdirt.com. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
Pulse of New Hampshire, 106.
Pappas this morning. I think it was a good 12, 15 minutes. And that's what I like about, I guess, doing the program. What's different about this program, everything is so politically divisive and media, national media. It's one way or the other. And I like to call the balls and the strikes the way I see them. You may not always agree. And we can do it civilly, respectfully. But we talked about a lot, ranging from should Secretary Noem, Homeland Security, be replaced that oversees Border Patrol and ICE? And he said, yes, absolutely. And we talked about funding and where things are going to go in the Senate, a lot of stuff, as well as supporting the mission of ICE. These are the questions that should be asked right now. They're so divisive. And he has a Democrat opponent, Anna Brown, as you know, Citizens Count, citizenscount.org, before we get to the state legislature. And I asked the congressman, he has, I think her Karishma Manzoor, saying she wants, she'd abolish ICE, and he doesn't agree with it. He doesn't agree with that. He thinks the mission is good, but the leadership and some of the direction and policies can change. But he said the effort of enforcing people who came here illegally and break the law should continue. And he criticized, this was pretty interesting, he criticized the former administration, Joe Biden, for creating this immigration mess. So Chris Pappas is really interesting interview, because in all due respect to the congressman, he's been on my show a lot, and we touched upon veteran advocacy. He was pretty good at, how do I say this, Anna, respectfully, of maybe not always saying yes or no on questions, and being, rather eloquent and loquacious, and pretty direct this morning. So it was a good interview. I enjoyed it, and we'll have more on that. But Anna Brown, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. And I would also like to celebrate that in New Hampshire, we definitely, I think we keep it pretty straight. I'd say we have a pretty good record when it comes to politicians not being completely, wishy-washy and avoiding questions. It's going to happen everywhere. But definitely, I think in New Hampshire, voters hold them to a higher standard for sure.
Yeah. All right. So much happening. So much happening nationally, so much happening everywhere. But the legislature, nothing is slowing down there. Take it away.
Absolutely. So there are actually a couple public hearings this week, today, in fact, that are relevant to the conversations that are happening at the national level right now about what's going on in Minnesota. So in the Senate Judiciary Committee today, there is a bill, SB 623, that would require law enforcement officers in New Hampshire who are assisting Immigration and Customs Enforcement to display their ID, keep body cameras on, and leave their face uncovered. And there's a similar bill in the House, HB 1142. So we cannot, tell ICE necessarily what they can do as federal law enforcement in New Hampshire, but certainly we can regulate what happens with our own state and local law enforcement. And then there's another bill that I think is interesting because it's an idea I have not necessarily heard before in our state. And this is a bill that would require individuals applying to rent housing to disclose if they are a U.S. citizen or lawfully present in the United States or not. Now, it reminds me a little bit of the E-Verify concept, where theoretically employers then would have to verify the citizenship status of employees. So now you're sort of having to have, if you're renting housing, you have to, have at least the person disclose if they're a citizen or not. Of course, they could potentially lie, so I'm not really sure what the impact of this would be, but it's another sort of interesting idea about how else do we go about immigration enforcement in the United States other than what is happening right now. But as always, I do also like to bring it back to just very state-specific issues, local issues. And so two bills that have a hearing on Friday, actually, that I think are interesting. One increases the fine and potentially license suspension for passing a stopped school bus. And another one authorizes the use of high-resolution cameras on school bus stop bars to identify and convict people who violate the school bus stop laws. And so that very different, perhaps a smaller issue, you might say. But then again, on the other hand, I would argue that, the safety of children, and particularly on our roads, is always of utmost importance. So I would definitely keep that, in mind. As much as there are big, huge issues taking over, there's also that stuff that is going to happen locally that's going to affect you potentially a lot more. And one more bill I'll throw out there. This is on Thursday. There's a public hearing. There's a bill on HB 1339 that requires businesses to accept cash payment. And this has definitely gotten some increased support among Republicans I have seen. So I'm going to see if that goes anywhere. But as we all know, it's definitely becoming more and more cashless, whether it's Venmo or Apple Pay or the tap to pay with your cards. And, there's, I think, concerns about access with that. Not everybody has the luxury of these sort of digital payment methods, but also it can be a potential privacy issue, folks who want to use cash. So yes, as always, no shortage of interesting bill ideas in the New Hampshire House and Senate this week.
Interesting. Well, we'll see where it goes. The environment is interesting. I think, and you cover this stuff, but I really do feel, and I think it's going to continue into the winter and spring, that the national agenda is just going to really blanket the local stuff, but I may be wrong, and probably the midterm races.
I think that there will definitely be huge filtering of those national issues down to the local level when we're looking at the 2026 elections. But I would not discount that there are some big issues in New Hampshire, particularly related to school funding and school curriculum that, could definitely be a deciding factor when we're looking at maybe some of the primary elections, for example. I think we've talked about in the past, there have been some interesting examples of moderates actually triumphing over, attempts to have primaries from the left or the right in state house races. And I think that'll be an interesting indicator to watch in New Hampshire. Are we still going to have those sort of more middle of the road independent folks succeeding in the primaries, or are there going to be more primary challenges, which are unfortunately, sometimes funded by national groups?
And in these primaries, how far does the more progressive or very progressive candidate go? Because it seems the real energy, and especially I think in true New Hampshire and nationally, is on the far more liberal left than the moderate, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you, Anna Brown. Citizens Count. Citizenscount.org. Check it out. It is a real good website for your local legislative stuff, your state reps, your state senators, the bills, the trends, the votes, the issues. Thank you, Anna. All right, when we come back, Brad Card, co-host of Contact Politics, will be joining us. A reminder, there's still time. We want you to nominate a veteran in your life, someone you know. You don't have to be a veteran. If you are, thank you. It's our furnace, brand new, state-of-the-art furnace giveaway with full, complete installation to a veteran, free, just for their service. And it's a good time of year with the cold, and we're going to give that away in a week or two on my show. And we thank our friends at Triumph Home Services, headquartered in Bow, but growing in other locations. Morgan Storm and the team, Triumph Home Services. But go to the Pulse of NH, thepulseofnh.com, to nominate a veteran. Very easy to do. Just give your name or the veteran's name in the field and contact information. Just a short sentence or two about why you believe that veteran in your life. Could be your spouse, could be a parent, could be an uncle, could be a nephew, niece, brother, sister, neighbor, a buddy, someone in your life is a veteran, why they should get that brand new furnace. That's one of the things I do here on the show, is we support our veterans year round, not just on Veterans Day. Go to thepulseofnh.com, nominate a veteran, honor a hero. You'll see the furnace giveaway right there. You can't miss it. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of NH. Brad's on deck next.
News Staters get their news and information. This is the Pulse of New Hampshire. Good morning, New Hampshire, live from the Outdoor Pride Studios. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Are we back? One financial note, economic note. Federal Reserve beginning a 2-day meeting. There's been a lot of contentiousness between the chairman right now, the Trump administration over a bunch of stuff, but they're not expected, our economic experts and regular guests, they're not expected to lower or adjust the rate at all. Keep it where it is, so don't expect much there now. As we get into, I can't believe the back end of January or the ending, but they're meeting in the next 2 days. Brad Card, co-host of Contact Politics. Brad, a lot to talk about. We had Congressman Pappas on. Of course, you know he's running for the U.S. Senate, but a lengthy interview, probably closer to 12 or 15 minutes. We covered a bunch of stuff, including funding and spending, the debate over Homeland Security spending, ICE, the policies and thing. And in the Senate, could this actually, lead to a government shutdown or not? Pappas saying he hopes it doesn't, but you never know. But Brad, good morning.
Hey, Jack. Yeah, there's a ton going on. Boy, my phone has been going since about 6:30 this morning.
Where do the chips fall in terms of Congress and government, staying open or a possible shutdown? I know the cards are in the Senate, but you know that chamber as well as anyone. And of course, we have a great guest coming up on Contact Politics from the Senate. But where do you think the chips fall, Brad?
It's a good question, Jack. I don't know. I mean, I think the administration has really bungled this up, and it is. I mean, all fingers should be pointed right at DHS, at the secretary and the director of the Border Patrol. Badly mismanaged this, and I also I just don't get some of the messages that people are saying. I mean, again, we've talked about this before, but it defies logic and it defies what you see with your own eyes. So it's been a horribly mismanaged effort, in my opinion, out in Minnesota. I think the president correctly feels the same way, and that's why he's got the border czar, Tom Holman, to go out to Minnesota and meet with the governor and the mayor and try to cool this temperatures down a little bit, which is badly needed. It's been a disaster, and it's been very badly mismanaged, in my opinion. And I think that there is real accountability that needs to be addressed, and I think it's up to the president to do it, and I think that he will. It seems like he's at least getting the message, and he's unhappy as well.
Yeah, things are heating up today at the White House, and I asked Representative Pappas my first question, because it's our poll question up on X. Do you think Secretary Noem will be replaced as Homeland Security Secretary, which oversees Border Patrol, Border Security, and ICE? And he said absolutely yes. She should never have been put in there. But what do you think, Brad?
I think she should go. I mean, I hate to say it, but
do you think she will?
This has not been a good tenure for her. The messaging has been bad, in my opinion, for a while. It's the over-the-top rhetoric, Jack. As we've talked about this before, and we've talked about it on Contact Politics. We say mission creep has gotten in, and I think mission creep is been really hurting this administration. I think incorrectly. Some in the Department of Homeland Security, including the secretary and certain her advisors, they think that this rhetoric is going to endear them to Donald Trump. And I think that can be true until it isn't. And I think that what's been happening is public sentiment has drastically turned against the administration with these ICE efforts. And we've got to be going after criminals. We've got to be going after people that are in this country illegally and have really wreaked havoc during the Biden administration. But like, as I said before, randomly stopping people because they look like they might be immigrants, that's not what people sign up for. That's not what
but also
want.
that's a simplistic statement that overstates and a lot of the good accomplishments. By the way, I saw an update in the state of Maine.
David, the problem is, Jack, the one bad seed, the one bad thing you do will wipe out 50 great things that you did.
Well, I know Margaret Thatcher Margaret Thatcher had a great line about that. But I'm just saying, in Maine, no one's talking about it. It wasn't 100. Now it's 200 previously convicted.
Good to them.
Previously convicted criminals in the state of Maine, 200. previously convicted illegal alien criminals apprehended in the state of Maine, and that's not the headline.
That's why these defunding issues, to defund ICE is ridiculous. To defund the Border Patrol is ridiculous. To defund Homeland Security is ridiculous. But Congress does have an oversight role, and I can see Congress exercising its oversight role. And I think that it would go a long way if the Trump administration moved away from this a little bit. And I think that the only way you can really do that is by having change. And you change your Homeland Security Secretary, and you probably change your Border Patrol Director, who was in charge of things in Minnesota.
All right, Brad Card. We're going to have a new podcast up today regardless, Contact Politics, this afternoon, however you get your podcast.
Yeah,
whether
the
it's
storm is wreaking havoc on it, Jack. I mean, the senators' flights are delayed and canceled, and they're rebooking, and how the nerve of everybody, the nerve of these airlines to bump people so they can't be in DC to do our show is crazy, right?
But we'll have a new show anyway today, however you get your podcast. The Pulse Podcast Network is one way. We have a bunch of great podcasts up there, both in-house and out-of-house, including Contact Politics, Spreaker, Apple, you name it, and we'll have much more. And Brad, what are you hearing anything, speaking of Washington? I know it's, first month of the new year. And I mentioned I had Representative Pappas on, and there's a big U.S. Senate race here, as you know. You're close with, both John Easton and Scott Brown. And I just had Chris Pappas on my show to begin the show this morning in a lengthy interview. Are you hearing any buzz, any talk down in Washington about New Hampshire Senate race yet, or is it just still a little bit too early?
Well, clearly through the Republican Senatorial Committee, they're 110% behind John Easton. Certainly Scott Brown is pounding the pavement in New Hampshire, and people in New Hampshire like grassroots campaigning too. So that's, you're going to see how that plays out. But look, these are going to be very expensive races. The NRSC is going to play heavily in New Hampshire to see this as a potential pickup opportunity. They're also on defense with a number of senators. Maine, Susan Collins is right at the top of that list. Certainly John Husted, who we anticipate we'll have him on Contact Politics soon. And, he's got a hot race out in Ohio with former Senator Sherrod Brown. Lisa Murkowski, there's a whole lot happening, and the money is pouring in, and politics is at play. We're in an election year. We're in a midterm election year. So it's going to be harder and harder to do things in Washington, D.C. that are not super partisan. It's a little disappointing that the appropriations process now is uber partisan because of this Homeland Security issue.
Yep.
And we're going to have to see how that plays out, because that really could threaten another partial government shutdown.
All right, Brad, we'll talk to you on Contact Politics. Brad Card, thank you.
There you go.
Coming up, 10 o'clock, Dean Spiliotis, Southern New Hampshire University. Tomorrow, we're going to have an update on affordable housing. John Stebbins, our friends at Procon Construction, Procon Corp. Procon, really one of the top teams and builders, designers, you name it, but they're determined and dedicated to provide more affordable housing. Funny note, as we go out of this hour, Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. On my show page or social media page for my show, there's a video from the sitting governor of New York. And I'll just say Governor Kathy. So the governor, it's a video she's put up. 13,000 people have, sort of checked it out. It's a video, and she's showing people how to shovel snow. The governor of New York is showing people how to properly shovel snow and not hurt your back. And I'm just laughing because I don't know in New Hampshire if we need Governor Ayotte to do a video showing us how to shovel. I guess it's always welcome. But I had Governor Ayotte on my show Friday, and she was actually out skiing about 9 different areas for the 603 day. So she was out skiing, enjoying the snow. But I'm glad the governor of New York has to show the customers of New York, the voters, how to shovel snow in places like upstate New York or Syracuse. It's I'm glad she's there to show them the tips or the do's and don'ts with shoveling snow. All right, we maybe we'll see some sunshine tomorrow, but a lot of digging out this morning still from the snow, which did go into last night, by the way. It was a light, fluffy, what I call champagne type powder snow, easy to clean off your vehicle, please, your roofs, your hoods, your back, the whole vehicle. But it did continue to come down into the evening hours. So after you shoveled everything and even cleaned off that Weber grill outside the cover anyway, you woke up, there's more snow on there, but it was just a couple of inches. Get a little bit of a break, maybe towards the back half of the weekend, but look at the bright side. Look at the bright side. I spoke to got a message from my brother-in-law who's, I guess they call it retired. Can't believe he's retired, but anyway, no, I'm just kidding you, Bobby. In the west coast of Florida this morning, west coast of Florida, where he's down there for half a year, and he has a place up in Maine where he likes to hunt, fish and hunt. West coast of Florida this morning, 34 degrees. West coast of Florida this morning, 34 this morning. Hey, I know it's colder here, but there you go. Hey, Google AWACS by the Pulse of an H. Jack, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a few.